Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Michigan Left. My name is Andrew George, and I'm sure some of you know, but I am so excited to do today's episode. We're going to talk about a couple things going on the state level and on the, the national level, but we're going to be very brief. I want to jump right into today's interview. Our special guest today is none other than Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. He's a former gubernatorial candidate here in Michigan, as well as an epidemiologist, former health director in Detroit, CNN contributor, list goes on. Incredible progressive ally, and I'm happy to have him on the show. So we'll be talking to him later, but first we're going to dive right into it. An episode of the Michigan Left just would not be an episode of the Michigan Left if we did not talk about Washtenaw County's new prosecutor, El-Sayed. I feel like he gets brought up every episode, but it's because this man is on a mission. This week, he authorized new policy in Washtenaw County. Now, before I dive into that, I want to talk about, what we talked about on the other episodes. And, that's things like, no charges will be filed for consensual sex workers. That's a first in Michigan, as far as I know. There has, drug offenses. He has made it so that no charges will be filed against offenders for things like psychedelic mushrooms in Washtenaw County. This guy, he ended cash bail, essentially, in Washtenaw County. All right, so this guy is just making huge progressive waves. And this week, he announced that they will no longer be bringing charges against minors for small offenses, things like possession of tobacco or marijuana or things like that. And they want to push the Washtenaw County criminal system, juvenile system to be exact, into restorative justice rather than punitive justice. So they're looking to stop charging minors with criminal offenses so that they don't have records for the rest of their lives. So just another incredible thing that Ellie's doing over there in Washtenaw County. And I'm happy to say that next week, Ellie will be joining us on the show to talk about some of those policies. And I'm really excited about that. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is just kind of, I guess it's not really that funny, but it kind of gave me a chuckle today. I saw that former President Donald Trump has created his own new office, and that is the office of the former president, Donald Trump. And the point he said to the office is basically to keep his legacy of what he was doing alive and patriotism, yada, yada. It's laughable, but at the same time, we should be cautious. This is Trump's attempt probably to rile up his base. Whether or not that be for a run in 2024, I know we talk about that a lot on the show, or whatever else he might have in mind. It's no secret. Even many Republicans are acknowledging that the January 6th insurrection on our Capitol was due to Trump's commands. Trump commanded that insurrection. So, it's important to remember that and know that that's the type of level Trump is willing to stoop to. So who knows what's going on with this office of the former president, Donald Trump, but we shall find out. Okay, so coming up, we are going to speak to Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. But before we jump into that, we're going to go to a short break. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me. We'll be right back with Dr. Abdul El-Sayed.
Welcome, true believers and newcomers alike.
Dude, what's with the announcer voice?
Is that too much?
It's not enough.
Look for new episodes on Mondays.
Not every Monday.
Tune in to keep up with the latest Marvel news.
So my name's Shan and this is Hoagie.
And learn more about your favorite Marvel heroes.
Mostly just our favorite part.
Find us on your preferred podcasting app.
Are you gonna tell them what the name of the podcast is?
I Can Marvel All Day.
Do you think we got our message across?
Hey, we have a podcast called I Can Marvel All Day. It's about everything Marvel, and we hope that you will listen to us.
Cue the music track.
The Watershed Voice is a community-first and community-supported publication bringing multi-generational content to Three Rivers and St. Joseph County. The Voice is built on a homegrown collection of contributors and staffers and is a platform for local artists and writers. Literature, poetry, and music are an essential part of the Watershed Voice mission and will augment traditional, unflinching news reporting. The Watershed Voice is available at watershedvoice.com, and Watershed Voice podcasts are available on all your preferred platforms. Consider a subscription or donation to the Watershed Voice today and support local journalism.
All right, welcome back. As promised, our next guest, I'm so thrilled to have on. I worked closely with him on numerous campaigns over the last couple of years. He is an incredible progressive. He's an epidemiologist. He's a CNN contributor. He is the former health director for the city of Detroit and former candidate for governor here in Michigan. And now an Amazon best-selling author, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. So welcome, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, to the show with me. All right, Abdul, thank you so much for joining the show, brother.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely, anytime. Obviously, I'm thrilled to have you on. We won't dive into it too much, but obviously we've worked together in the past on a lot of different projects. So I was very excited to have you on as a progressive ally. So
honored to be here.
Absolutely. So we're going to dive right in. It's not very often that I get an epidemiologist on the show and a healthcare professional. So I do want to talk about the pandemic a little bit. And I have a few questions about the pandemic. But to start off, I know, it was very obvious for everybody how terrible the past administration, the Trump administration, handled the COVID pandemic. Now we have Joe Biden in office, which is great. And I'm starting to see a lot of changes in the way Joe's handling the COVID pandemic. What do you see? What are the big takeaways you're seeing, the difference between Joe Biden's handling of this pandemic and Trump's handling of the pandemic?
Yeah, Andrew, I'll tell you, you're right to start with the pandemic. And the differences couldn't be more than night and day. You've got one administration that did not believe in science, that wanted to make us believe in magical thinking, that did not want to support state and local government, and that generally their misfeasance and the inability to lead has led to the kind of raging pandemic we see now. 400,000 people have died and counting. The incoming Biden administration, they have they've hit the ground running with a number of emergency executive orders that have fundamentally changed the game. Number one, the use of the Defense Production Act to deploy vaccines, the use of FEMA to reimburse state and local governments in that work, the calling up of the National Guard, the focus on reopening schools and ordering OSHA to guide folks about how to reopen safely. The investment in equity and a conversation about the fact that this pandemic has disproportionately burdened Black and Brown Americans. And then, of course, we have the proposed $1.9 trillion American Recovery Act, which the Biden administration is pushing, which would offer $1,400 checks, and that, of course, was the headline, but really invest in bailing out state and local governments who have been hit by this pandemic and taken the brunt of this pandemic across the country, would invest in school reopening, would invest billions of dollars in vaccine distribution. And so it really is night and day. Really grateful that we no longer have to face this pandemic down with Trump administration, that we've got an administration that believes in science. And then lastly, you can tell the difference just when you hear Jen Psaki or Dr. Fauci briefing the public about what's happening. There is a leading with the science, objective, transparent, honest truth about where we are and where we need to go. And I hope that that means that we are well past the beginning of the end and headed toward the kind of end to this pandemic that will allow us to go on and live our lives without having to think about it every corner we turn.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And you know, that is perfect, because that brings me into my next question. I believe Dr. Fauci just about a month ago made, and it's honestly no disrespect, but it's always a prediction right now. But Dr. Fauci predicted at the earliest we could see normalcy by fall of 2021. What do you think about that? What are your predictions? Do you agree with Dr. Fauci?
Well, I do. I think that is a fair prediction. I might even say that, if things keep moving the way they are, if we're able to deploy vaccine at a faster and faster clip, that you could start to imagine some kind of, quote unquote, normal as early as the summer. And I do want to say, though, that normal is not good enough. The normal before COVID-19 wasn't a great place for a lot of Americans. And if all we do is get back to normal and we don't learn the lessons of this pandemic, whether it has to do with the failure of the brittleness of our healthcare system, whether it has to do with the importance of building out a real public health infrastructure, whether it has to do with making sure that every American has access to a livable wage, and that we don't confuse the words essential and expendable in the future, then we won't have learned the lessons of this pandemic. And so I do hope that we are aiming for something that is better than the normal into which we went in this pandemic, where hundreds of thousands of people got thrown off of their health insurance every year, where people were going hungry, where we had record inequity and inequality. And so my hope is that we learn the lessons and we truly do, as Joe Biden would say, build back better. That's as much a challenge as it is a slogan, and that's what we're going to have to hold the administration accountable to.
I gotta admit, that was a great response. I agree wholeheartedly. Normal isn't good enough. We need to set ourselves up into a position where, we can tackle this type of situation at the beginning, rather than fighting our butts off at the end to try to stave off the infection. And again, it kind of brings me into my next question, which is, what, in your opinion, and I do appreciate all your answers. These are incredible answers to important questions. What, in your opinion, could the Trump administration, the previous administration, done from the very start, to change the direction of this pandemic?
I mean, look, the way to think about infectious disease epidemics is like fires. All of them start small, and if you can nip it in the bud when it is small, you don't have to fight it when it's a raging inferno. And so there is a lot that the Trump administration could have done from the very beginning, way back last year, when COVID-19 was a story relegated to China, which has everything to do with having built out a public health infrastructure and paid attention to it. That's the thing, is that public health works best when you don't know it's working, when you don't know you need it, because by then it is silently putting out the fires that could grow into infernos before you know that there's even a fire in place. And so we have been operating in this country with an anemic public health infrastructure for a long time. And what the Trump administration did, in effect, based on following their blind austerity politics, where you just cut anything that you see in sight that you don't understand, given even the fact that you don't understand much, you then cut out things that you absolutely need. It'd be like saying you see your fire alarm and it keeps turning red every couple of seconds with a little button, and so you don't know what that does, so you just throw it away. And then there's a fire in your house and you don't know about it, and then you remember that you probably should have not thrown away that fire alarm, but instead you probably should have made sure that the batteries were working. And so there's a lot that the administration could have done. My hope is that we learn the lessons, and that there is an investment in strong public health infrastructure. And I just want to make a note about this, right? A lot of the issues that we fight, can be broken down in partisan ways. This is not one of them. A lot of our pandemic infrastructure wasn't actually built by Democrat. It was built by George W. Bush, who had read a book about a pandemic and then realized that it was something that we could really be at risk for, and ordered a lot of investment into pandemic preparedness, which was sustained and invested in by the Obama administration and then destroyed by the Trump administration. And here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like you said, it shouldn't be a partisan issue, but we experienced, I don't have to tell you this, but we experienced a lot in the last 4 years that normal things that we thought were not partisan issues, Trump has definitely managed to turn into partisan issues. All aside the point, though, I was going to say this earlier. I could go on and on with questions that I think you would be perfect to answer, Abdul, but I won't venture into that. So we'll go on to the next question. And this one's kind of a loaded question a little bit, so forgive me, but it boils down to this. What do you believe our government should be doing now to help defeat the virus at this point in the virus, to help defeat the virus, prevent the next one, and get Americans back on their feet ASAP?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of things. So some of them, the Biden administration is already doing in the form of of their executive orders, right? Leveraging the power of the U.S. military and the power of the full force and might of the federal government toward getting vaccine out there is a number one priority. But beyond that, I do believe that we have to rethink the way our healthcare system is structured, and that means really rethinking healthcare generally. And of course, I believe in Medicare for all, which I know we're going to get to. But beyond that, also, one of the things that we have not learned is that if you are not able to secure people's livelihoods, they are forced to make a choice between protecting their lives or protecting those livelihoods. And one of the things that almost every major high-income country in the world has done is guarantee a level of income for every single citizen of their country. We have failed to do that, right? We got $1,200 checks, and then we got $600 checks, and now we're fighting over another $1,400 check. That's not enough. People have to pay their rent. People have to pay their water and pay their electricity and pay their heating. And they have to make sure that they're able to put food on the table for their families. And those one-time boluses of cash are just not enough. And so we have failed to do that from the very beginning. We need to start doing it now. And then the last thing I'll say is this. There is something about the way that our economy is structured that every single time something bad happens, you end up getting a quote-unquote K-shaped recovery, right? So the rich end up getting richer and the poor end up getting poorer. And you're seeing this acceleration of inequity in our society as a function of these mass disaster events, whether it was the Great Recession or it's the pandemic. And so we really have to be asking, what are the long-term knock-on consequences of corporate capture of many of the most important industries in our society, and how do we address that? Because if we don't, then there's a lot more we need to do. And one area where we have to really focus is big tech. It's not just about the monopolization of the internet marketplace. It's also the fact that their entire profit structure, their incentive, is to allow disinformation to promulgate because it keeps people's eyeballs on their screens and therefore allows them to sell ad space because those eyeballs are there. And so we've got to address those incentives that keep driving disinformation across everything from YouTube to Facebook to Twitter to Instagram to Pinterest. And if we don't get that right, I worry a lot about the basic intellectual infrastructure in our society founded on the idea that reasonable people can come together and make decisions about where we ought to go if, in fact, we agree on what fact means. And that is being fundamentally undercut by the nature of big tech right now. And so if we're not thoughtful about that, then I worry a lot that a lot of the programs, whether it's the pandemic or it's people storming our Capitol in an insurrection, that they're going to continue to get worse, or that we will not have taken the opportunity to close the door to the future of that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's a whole nother aspect I didn't really think about in this fight. And you're absolutely right. We definitely live, I don't say this lightly, but in the age of misinformation. So, all right, but you did mention something in there that really spoke to me, and that was Medicare for all. I personally, in my political aspirations, worked very hard here in Michigan for single payer healthcare, with some great advocates here in Michigan. And I believe, and we believe here on the Michigan left, that Medicare for all is the answer to a lot of our problems, and a lot of the rest of the developed world, believe that it is the answer to a lot of our health issues and our healthcare issues here in America. Now, you have a book coming out on February 1st called Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide. And I am just going to toot your horn a little bit here. adds a title before your name. You are now best-selling author, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. So congratulations.
We hope so.
Well, Amazon is calling it right now. So I was pretty happy when I saw that. I'm very proud of you. But I'd like to hear more about the book. Seems the book isn't out yet. I plan on getting my copy immediately. And you know I'm going to mail it to you, Abdul, to get you to sign it. But can you tell our viewers a little bit more about your new book coming out, please?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Andrew, and thank you for your work and the incredible work of so many amazing people who are fighting for single-payer healthcare. My co-author and I, a couple of years back, as Medicare for All was again making headlines, realized that there just wasn't a good book that walked through a lot of the misconceptions about Medicare for All, and we wanted to write that book. And so we set out to say, well, what are the problems with American healthcare? How would Medicare for All solve them? What are the alternatives that people are proposing, and how do those map onto our problems? And then what is the politics of Medicare for All? And that's the book we wrote. We're really grateful to get forwards from both Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Pramila Jayapal. And the book comes out on February 1st. It is intended to be just that, a citizen's guide, no nonsense, just a direct discussion of healthcare. And we're honest about what we understand about Medicare for All, and also some of the open questions that we have to solve. But we do believe that it is the most important health intervention that we can make in this country if we are serious about providing people with equitable, affordable access to efficient and effective healthcare. And so we're excited about the book. I hope that folks will check it out. And you don't have to be a Medicare for All supporter. You can be a Medicare for All critic, but I hope that you'll keep an open mind and take a look at the book. And for those of you who are Medicare for All supporters but know a lot of critics, I recommend maybe buying them a copy and then having a conversation about it. So we're excited about the book, and appreciate you picking up yours.
Awesome. As a progressive, I'll say again, and that's a good point that Dr. El-Sayed brought up. It's important for critics to read it, but as a progressive, from one progressive to another, I highly recommend you pick up the book on February 1st. I can't think of a better person to explain Medicare for All than Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. So that book is Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide. That's out on February 1st at all major locations, including online. And you can pick up your copy then. Until then, thank you, Abdul, for coming on the show. It has been a blast. It has been very informative. I hope to have you on the show soon. Thank you.
Andrew, thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again for joining us on the Michigan Left for another week. And thanks again to Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. What an incredible guest and an incredible progressive ally. I hope to have him on the show in the future. Speaking of the future, next week we will have Washtenaw County Prosecutor Ellie Savitt on the show. I know we've talked about him a lot on the show and the amazing things he's doing in Washtenaw County, so I'm so excited to have him on the show to actually talk about those policies that are so important. Again, thank you for tuning into the show. Before I let you go, I want to remind you that in order to keep these incredible guests coming on the show and keep this incredible setup going that we have, it's going to require small contributions from viewers like you. If you could go to patreon.com/MILeft, that's patreon.com/MILeft, you can view previous episodes of the Michigan Left, and you can also become a contributing member. Contributing members is what keeps this show alive. Even if you can only contribute $3 a month, it keeps the show alive. It keeps great guests coming on the show, and you'd be an amazing help. So again, thanks for watching the show. Next week we have Ellie Savitt coming on, and we'll see you then.